Good morning. I'm Ronnie Ziggy, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this morning's Insight program. We welcome everyone, all races, all identities, orientations, and expressions, all those who suffer disabilities, and all political perspectives who come in peace. We begin our program today with the chalice lighting. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even though the space of the void is vast and our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness, in our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, this pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known. By Sean Trapp. Now, please join me in our affirmation of covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church, and the quest of truth its sacrament, and service its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the good. Thus do we covenant with one another. Our tradition at UUVC is to be generous with our time, talent, and treasures, so each week we take up a collection to show our commitment to ourselves and to the community at large. This month's Share the Plate recipient is All About Kids. In cooperation with the Church of Christ, your generosity will provide meals for kids and their families during the summer when they are not receiving lunches at school. To make a contribution, send your check made out to UUVC to 403 Barcelona, Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, 71909, with share in the memo line. Our Insight service today is a Zoom presentation by Anais Troadec entitled Posses Armed with Principles. Troadec will talk about the newly formed Unitarian Universalist Village Church Social Justice Posse. These posses attempt to influence the Arkansas State Legislature through information campaigns advocating for progressive issues. The posses, organized under deputies, are ready to respond with calls, emails, and letters to support or oppose bills in the 93rd Arkansas Legislature. Some also testify at Arkansas House and Senate committee hearings. UUVC has joined the Citizens First Congress, a coalition of 65 Arkansas grassroots organizations and allies who work together to expand opportunities and improve the quality of life for everyone in Arkansas. All members value and fight for a representative government that is transparent, accountable, responsive, and inclusive. Our posses base their responses and actions to bills on the UU principles of affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the right of conscience, justice, equity, and compassion for all, and respect for the independent web of existence. Anais Marat Troadec has over 40 years' experience in the development of civil society, democracy, and good governance in the United States, Africa, and the former Soviet Union of the United Nations and USAID. She is trilingual with a master's degree in organizational and industrial psychology, with undergraduate studies at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, the University of Madrid, Spain, and the University of Geneva, Switzerland. The daughter of village pioneers in 1973, she has seen the village grow and prosper these past 50 years. Now, as a resident, she understands what her parents meant when they said, "This is paradise."
Good morning. I'm Anais Troadec, a member of the Posse. We are Posses armed with principles. I'd like to talk to you today about something that we learned in a TED Talk that was the impetus of everything that we're doing. In the TED Talk, there were 3 circles. You had an outer circle that said what, an inner circle that said how, but the most important circle was the why, and this is called the golden circle. And we're taking a look at why are we doing this as UUVC, as members of this congregation. We are doing this in order to support people, and we are following our principles, and the most important principle that we have is the belief in the inherent dignity and worth of every person. That's how we started out. I was a delegate to the Citizens First Congress through AUW last summer, where we learned that there's an organization called the Citizens First Congress that is a coalition of over 65 grassroots organizations here in Arkansas. In fact, there are 2 UU congregations that belong to the Citizens First Congress, and that is the UU Church in Little Rock and the Fellowship up in Fayetteville. Also, one of the members of the UU Church in Little Rock is on the steering committee of the Citizens First Congress. So this is a really important organization that stands up for people. They're grassroots. And we decided after that as a social justice committee, we wanted in. We wanted to do something like that also. So we immediately joined the Citizens First Congress. And it was immediate. We jumped in during the legislation, which was in the 7th or 8th week. So 8 weeks had already been going on. We jumped in feet first, head first at times, into the deep water. And right now, I tell you, we are dog paddling, trying to keep our head above water, because there are just so many bills that come up. And you have to understand that there are different divisions. And so we decided that with the CFC, the Citizens First Congress, we would join in their effort under certain headers. Civil rights and election, education, economics, and education. So here come the posse. We decided to form a posse. And the posse, do you remember the posse in the Old West, where the sheriff called up the posse and they went out to get the bad guys, guns a-blazing? Well, that's what we are. We are posses also. We're posses who have a common interest, a common characteristic, a common purpose. We have 4 posses, with the heads of the posses are called the deputies. And what is the role of all of these posses and the deputies? Well, the deputies basically are understanding what's going on in their posse, education, civil rights, elections, etc. And what they do is they inform all of the posse members. We started the posse with 57 people from our congregation. And some of them just want to be informed. Others want to do a little bit, but not too much. And then you have others who are very active, who inform and tell everyone what's going on in different bills and the pros and cons of each bill. Barack Obama said, "A change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things." Well, that's us. were ordinary people doing extraordinary things. In fact, Charles de Gaulle said, "I have come to the conclusion that politics is too serious a matter to be left to the politicians." That's us. We joined in, we jumped in to this posse. What do we try to do? We're trying to influence the Arkansas state legislature. We know that citizen participation does have an effect on the lawmakers, on the representatives and the senators. We have two representatives in the village, Richard McGraw, and then Lanny Fite, who's over in the Saline County, most extreme area east of Hot Springs Village. And we have one senator, Senator Sample. The Arkansas legislature right now is made up of about 80% Republicans in the whole House and Senate. So we are working with our representatives who are of the Republican Party. And it's very, very interesting to see what we're doing and how we're doing it. When we joined the Citizens First Congress, we were able to get information from our leg, which is Arkansas legislature, to see what bills are coming, what bills were discussed, and even who discussed the bill. And there are videos of every person who testified to some bill, for or against. I don't know if you remember 20, 30, so many years ago, that there was a song from Schoolhouse Rock, as a matter of fact, and it says, "I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill, where it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday, at least I hope and pray that I will. But today, I'm still just a bill." I'd like to talk to you about one of the bills that the posse, the economic posse, was interested in. This came up in the third or fourth week of the legislature, where they started to talk about a tenant landlord bill, some kind of a warranty for habitability for tenants to be able to live in safe, clean, good housing. Arkansas was the only state in the Union that did not have any kind of a law regarding standards for the properties to be rented, rights of the tenants, rights and responsibilities of the tenants and of the landlords. We are the only state in the Union that have not had this. In fact, the last state that wrote a law for habitability was Alabama, and that was in the year 2007. So you see, we have been the only one, the last for all these years. We are, as part of the Citizens First Congress, we work with member organizations, and one of the member organizations that we work with is Arkansas for Stronger Communities. And the director, Lynn Foster, has worked in the last 5 sessions to try to get some wording for legislation in regard to this. Finally, there was a bill that was proposed by Representative Gazaway. And it was the first intent of trying to do something. But you might want to take a look at the bill, and basically it was for landlords and not much for tenants. But in the State House, many thought that it had gone even too far, the few things that it offered to the tenants. So it stayed in the committee. It was not passed on to the House or passed on to the Senate to have a look at. So the Senate, Arkansas Senate, decided that they'd come up with their own bill, which was nothing, basically. The bill didn't even offer that the landlord had to have smoke detectors or carbon monoxide, or running water, or a source for heat. It was a terrible bill. And that's when we got involved. I, as the deputy for the economic posse, I went up and I spoke at the House when it first came up. And it was interesting because the take that I had was that neighborhoods need to have safe housing. When neighborhoods are not kept up, for tax-paying purposes, even the value of the property goes down, and the whole neighborhood goes down if things are not being kept up. And there are many, many, many units here in Arkansas that don't have any respect for the tenants. The landlords don't basically do anything. And what it says in this bill was, if you don't like it, you can leave. There's no recourse at all for the tenant. And it requires the tenant also to, if they're upset with something, need something to be repaired, that they have to send a certified letter to the landlord. Many of the tenants that are in some of this very low-income housing don't know their rights. They don't know how to go about making a claim. And this bill did not say anything about retaliation. The landlord could retaliate. If the tenant does not pay the rent, in Arkansas, the criminal justice system will get involved. The sheriff will send some sort of a deputy to get the people out. And they can do that within 6 days. And if you don't like it, you can leave. So what happens to neighborhoods, and that was my take, is that once you have the come and go of tenants and the property not being kept up because the tenants really can't live there, what happens is the neighborhood really, really starts to go down. And the families that have to leave like that, they also, their life, the stability of their life comes very much into question. And there are unintended circumstances that I tried to talk to the House about and the Senate, that neighbors need to know each other. They have to have a stable environment because they have to depend on each other. And when you have a good neighborhood who are kind of looking out for each other, they see the kids going to school, coming back from school. If there's not that stability, things can fall down very quickly. The parents, the mother, most of the time it's a mother with children being kicked out. They have to take the kids out of school. There's instability. They have to perhaps leave their ethnic community. It's a terrible thing for parents, for tenants. And there's no recourse. If you do not pay your rent in Arkansas, it's a criminal offense. And you end up with a misdemeanor on your record. We are the only state in the union that does this. We criminalize non-payment of rent. And you say to yourself, why would we want this? Well, it's a matter of money. And what I understand from the other landlords that I spoke with, that to get someone out is a very costly thing if you go through the civil system. Going through the criminal system doesn't cost you anything, basically. So it's a matter of economics. And so people will end up with a record, with a misdemeanor on their record. It's not good because when other people see that, it's very hard for these same tenants to get new housing because of their record. And what happens when you don't have stable neighborhoods, I told them, is that you have crime and drugs and gangs that move in because there's nothing stable. I think I was fairly successful in talking about that to the House. The bill in the House did not go anywhere. No one in the House committee, wanted to vote on a bill that was almost a minimum in the House. So it died. The bill died. Didn't go anywhere. So what happened is that the Senate decided that they would take up a bill. And they came up with a bill that was much, much worse than the House bill. It was very, very, very limited. And after certain testimony and working also with the Citizens First Congress, the Arkansans for Strong Communities, we were able to make some changes in the bill, something that would at least be a start. When I talked to one of the representatives, one of our representatives, he basically said, you know, the bill is not perfect, but let me tell you, if you were starving, if you were dying of thirst, and you wanted a bottle of water, and all I had is a little cup of water, would you not accept the cup of water because you wanted the whole bottle of water? No, you have to accept the cup. And that's basically what we did. I testified before the Senate last week, and with that same angle of neighborhoods going down, etc., well, they took me over the coals, to tell you the truth. They didn't like it. They didn't like that we were still saying that this was not a good bill. And I was asked point blank, do you think it's the landlord's fault that neighborhoods get run down? Do you think it's the landlord's fault that there are muggings and murders and theft in neighborhoods? Do you think that's the landlord's fault? And I tried to get around it by saying certain things, and he said, no, 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 no. You didn't listen to me. You don't hear my question. My question, is it the landlord's fault? And there I was, in front of 20 people in the House, Senate. And I said yes, because I can't say no. Landlords have a responsibility. I am a landlord. I talk to them. I'm a landlord. I've been a landlord for 50 years in 3 different states. I know what landlords need to do to keep up neighborhoods, good neighborhoods, housing for poor people. It was interesting that when I walked into the Capitol, you have to go through security, and they give you an armband. And this is the armband that I got. Handwritten on it, it says, "Don't wish for it, work for it," with a little smiley face by some person who wrote it out himself. And that basically is what we do. We have to work for it. This habitability bill that we've been working for the last 8 weeks to try to get it passed, or try to get it a good semblance of what a good habitability bill is very necessary, because here in Arkansas, there are 1 million Arkansans who rent. 1/3 of the people of the state rent. And it's very, very important that landlords understand their responsibilities. In the committee where I testified, they asked people about, well, if you have the responsibility to fix things up, then you'll have to raise the rent. It's going to cost you more for you to maintain your properties. And this is what they were saying. Members of the House and the Senate were saying this to landlords. Many good landlords know that it's a business. We have one of our members that has over 400 units, one of our representatives. It's a business. And when you have a business, you have to keep your business up. If you're a taxi driver, you have to really maintain your taxi clean, aerated, etc., and in good working order. Otherwise, you won't be able to make your living. Well, somehow landlords think they can get away with not repairing their properties, not giving access to heat, electricity, clean water. And there are many places here in Arkansas that don't have it. I was speaking to one tenant who said that she was afraid to talk to her landlord because it was a very inexpensive rent that she has. But her house flooded 3 times with children. And what happens is that you get mold and mildew. There is nothing in the bill that talks about making sure that it's safe to live in that house with mold. They have to get rid of the mold and the mildew. That's not in the bill. You don't have to do that. You don't like it, leave. It's a cheap rent. In fact, one of the landlords speaking, and he was a landlord that didn't have many properties, and a good person, a good man, I'm sure. And he said, well, we're doing them a favor to give them some kind of housing. He thought he was doing himself, us, or the tenant, a favor, keeping the rent low and not fixing anything, but still making money. And this is basically what we're all about. In the last week or so, 2 weeks, there are 16 anti-voter bills that are in the House and the Senate. In fact, there are even some constitutional amendments that talk about restricting voting. And it basically follows all of the information that you've had in D.C. about housing, about voting. And these voting laws that are coming up right now are so anti-people. Of course, Jay Leno said, if God wanted us to vote, he would have given us candidates. Well, that's the truth. And we've got to be out there to get good candidates in order to work to be the kind of posse that we want to be, the kind of persons that we want to be here at UUVC and around us. We want to take responsibility. When I spoke to the House, I said that it is a responsibility, a human responsibility to each other, to help each other, to lift each other up, tenant and landlord alike. And it is the responsibility of the state. And basically, the primary responsibility of a state is to protect its citizens. And we know in Washington that it's very important. They have to, the primary responsibility of the president and the Senate and the House is to protect the people. Well, down on this level and the state level, this is what we have to make sure happens. And I'm on the Economic Committee. There are other committees that are taking a look at those voting rights. In fact, Todd Carter is the Civil Rights and Election Posse. We have Dave Welch, who will be leaving us, but he's the Education Posse. Very important. They rounded up their posses. People wrote. People emailed, people called. In fact, what we even did is that when bills were passed in the House and in the Senate, it went up to the governor's office to be signed. We then, at every intervention we could, we called the governor's office to let him know that we are not in agreement, or that we are in agreement with certain bills. Please pass, please do not pass. Please sign, please do not sign. That's what we do on all levels, and it's on a statewide level. And when we started this posse, we joined forces here in the village with an organization called Resistance. And that organization, of course, was founded in 2016 to resist. And the Resistance helps us, gives us information on different bills. The Resistance, Jerry Ann Nielsen and Steve Rittenmeyer, they follow the laws, they follow the bills, and they let us know what's going on. They also follow bills that are in Washington at the Capitol. But we are really indebted to them for their help. We also would like to be able to join with other organizations here in the village if they're interested in forming a posse out of their churches, out of their organizations. We'd certainly like to have them, certainly like to help them do that. It's a very important thing that we can do. We as citizens have the right and the responsibility to help our legislators make good bills. So, right now, like I said, we started in the 8th week. Right now, we're coming up to in 2 more weeks, the legislative session will be over. They're passing lots of bills right now, as many as they can. One that doesn't work in one place, they'll redo the wording and put it in a different bill. You've got to really follow this. It's really important to follow this. And how we follow it, we get this weekly update of the bills that are going to be heard, worked on in the House and in the Senate for that week. They also tell us, as Citizens First Congress, all of our members, what they feel about these bills. Do we support it? Do we oppose it? And we also find out the reasons, the important reasons why these bills should be supported or opposed. And we're learning all of this. As I said, we're only like 8 weeks into this. We're learning. We don't know everything. We don't know much at all. I get lost at the Capitol all the time, as a matter of fact. But it's important what Citizens First Congress is doing with us, keeping us apprised. What's going to happen after the closing? The legislature is closing at the end of April. April 30th, I think, is the date. Our posses won't give up because we have a plan, a very, very detailed, worked out plan on what we're going to do in this intersession, because the legislature only meets for bills and laws, etc., every 2 years. So this year was the year of the legislation, and next year is going to be budget and things like that. Well, we're not going to give up this next year and wait for the following year. We are going to be training. We're going to be training in advocacy, training in communication, training in getting the word out. We're going to be training on how to buddy up with a legislator. We're going to be friendly. We're going to be helpful. We're going to be kind to everyone. And we're going to work hard to make sure that they see what the people want. So, I would like to ask you to join us. Anyone in UUBC who's interested in joining a posse. As I said, we're 57 strong right now out of the congregation. There are choices of 4 different areas to get into. The education, many of you are educators, many of you are teachers. The education posse might be something for you. The education posse wrote and emailed the education committees to talk about some of those bills that were there. One of them especially, that a lot of Arkansas taxpayer money was going to go into non-public schools. Well, we know what that means. And with all of the effort of the Citizens First Congress and every organization that understood what that meant, we were able to defeat that bill. And this is it. This is power. This is important. And legislators know it. If a legislator hears from 10 of his constituents, her constituents, they're on the run. They're looking to make a deal because they want something passed. And let's see if we can help them pass it. So this next year, training, advocacy, understanding the process, working with other CFC members. And all of us also are invited to join their caucuses. Each caucus meets once a month for an hour on Zoom, talking about their issues. So this would be education, civil rights, economics, those, and environment. Those are the caucuses that we can belong to. And it's interesting to hear what other organizations are saying about what's going on vis-a-vis those issues. So we invite you to join us. Session is almost over, but it's just starting. We did get that cup of water. That bill, the housing bill, inadequate, was passed. We got the cup of water, and now we're looking for the whole bottle, and that's what we're going for. It's a step. It's the first step. And I'm glad that it's happened, and I'm glad that we're involved in it, and I'm just so happy to work with the organization of the Posse. So you have Meg Cozier, who's the information gatherer, sending information out to everyone, knowing what the bills are, sending it out to the Posse in regard to certain bills. We have Linda Ragsdale, who understands what's going on and giving us advice on how to act and how to be. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful operation that we have right now at UWC. And I'm proud of all of us. And we ask you to join if you're interested. Thank you.
If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know you're the one I want to go through time with. If I had a box just for wishes and dreams that had never come true, the box would be empty except for the memory of how they were answered by you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around